Shacharach describes what we land on Pesach and gives a simon for it. Moshach Torah Kadosh B'Kaspa Pesach B'Midbara Shlach Buchra, which literally means just each one's a name for one word in that Kriyas HaTorah. For example, the first 2 days we're going to learn Moshach, which is Mishchu K'ulachem Tekei Tzoyin, and the second day is Torah. We're going to learn about Shara Kesef. Lavush brings that this simon is not just a picked words, the first words of every Kriyas HaTorah. Mishchu Torah means they took money together to buy a shur in the midbar to make an egel. Kadosh B'Kaspa, they used a lot of money to make that. Pesach B'Midbar, this Avodah was set up in the midbar, and therefore Shalach Buchra, the Becharim, the firstborns, lost their ability to do the Avodah. So the first day we learn Mishchu, which is Mishchu K'ulachem Tzoyin. So we're going to divide it into 7 aliyahs as it's going to be Shabbos. First aliyah, Kayin. It says, Vayichot Tzoyin, you should take a Tzoyin every single day. You should take it. B'Shachtu Pesach, you should check the Korban Pesach. Dip your finger in the blood, put on the mezuzahs and the mashkev. The Bereshim will pass over the houses and will not afflict the people in these houses, and do not allow the mashkas into these houses, and therefore they will be saved. Levi, Klal Yisrael, when you come to Eretz Yisrael, you should do the same thing again. And as well, if you're going to say, your children are going to ask, why do we do this? We'll say, because the Bereshim jumped over our houses in Mitzrayim and saved us, and that led to a great Yetzias Mitzrayim. Exactly at midnight, Hashem Hika Kol B'char, the Bereshim comes and afflicts every single B'char, firstborn in Egypt. Paro wakes up, hears the cries and the screams, runs out looking for Moshe and Aaron, and says, Tzu, do us a favor, get out of Egypt. Rabbi, the Mitzrayim, as a whole, not just Paro, everybody, do us a favor, Jews, get lost, get out of here, you're afflicting us. The longer you're here, the more trouble we have. Klal Yisrael grabs their dough that they have, they put it on their shoulders, and they're ready to leave. Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, remember, you guys got to take gold and silver as promised to Avraham Avinu, and the Bereshim puts chen in the Einei Mitzrayim. They ashilum, and they give everybody their gold and silver, and Klal Yisrael is ready to go. Chamishi, 600,000 Jews except the children, means including the children is a lot more, start moving. And a lot of Erev Rav, Mikna, Tzoyin, they got a lot of stuff going with them, and they start traveling. And the dough gets baked on their shoulders. And the exact culmination of 430 years since the time of Bris Ben Absarim, 30 years since Yitzchak was born, 400 years since Yitzchak was born, Klal Yisrael leaves Mitzrayim. That be'etzem hayom hazeh, in midday, not in the middle of the night, they're not sneaking out, midday, and from that day on, Leil Shimurim, the day that was set aside for Shechem Bereshis to be Yetzias Mitzrayim, has been set aside for us as a day of protection forever. Shishi, these are the rules of Korban Pesach, Chukas HaPesach. A Ben Nechar, somebody who's Misnakru of the Lavina Shel Shemayim, who is not into the Rebbeinu Shem anymore, he's anti-defiant, he's not allowed to eat from the Korban Pesach. An Eved has to get his bris milah and then he can eat. A Toishav Asachar living in Eretz Yisrael cannot eat from a Korban Pesach, he must be eaten in one house, and you're not allowed to break any bones in the Korban Pesach as well. Shvi, an oral, somebody who doesn't have a bris milah is not allowed to eat from the Korban Pesach. A ger who gets a bris milah is allowed to eat from it. Klal Yisrael did the Korban Pesach, and the Etzem Hayom Hazeh, on that day, they left Mitzrayim. On the second day of Pesach, we learn from our Siman Torah, which talks about Shara Kesef Eiz, talks about animals that are kosher for karbonis. Torah tells us that from the 8th day and on, animals kosher for carbon, as well other halachas of karbonis. Oisav es benay, you're not allowed to shecht an animal and its offspring on the same day. The following things are Ma'adei Hashem. We start listening to Yom Tovim. There are 6 days a week that we are allowed to work. Shabbos is a day of rest. B'chodesh Rishon, the first month, which is Chodesh Nisan, is going to be the Yom Tov of Pesach. On the 14th in the evening, we do the Shech Korban Pesach. On the 15th of Nisan starts Yom Tov of Pesach for 7 days. Levi, when they come to Eretz Yisrael, you should bring an omer, which is the cutting of the first grain of the year. You're going to cut it, and you're going to bring it as a korban, together with a korban and a mincha, on the second day of Pesach. You're not allowed to eat any of the first grains before that. Shlishi, you should start counting from that day when we bring the korban omer, the second day of Pesach, 50 days. And as well, the Torah calls it Sheva Shabbos, 7 weeks till we get to the Yom Tov of Shavuos. We're going to count what's called Sfira Omer. Partially the reason why it's laid on the second day of Pesach when we can start counting Sfira. You're then going to bring on Shavuos a korban Bikurim. Bikurim is brought together with 7 kvasim, 1 par, and 2 elim. That is besides the korbanos that are brought because of Yom Tov. And there's a mitzvah as well, the Torah tells us called Leket Shekopei. When you cut stuff in a field, you leave over the corner the bundles that you forgot and the little droppings as you were passing through the field that you left over. You leave them over for Aniyim. Ravi, on the first of the 7th month, which is the month of Tishrei, is going to be Rosh Hashanah. On the 10th of that month is Yom Kippur. Shabbos Shabbosin is the holiest day of the year. V'nisim es nafshesechem, you must afflict yourself with the Chamishes Inuim of Yom Kippur. Chamishi, on the 15th day of that month of Tishrei, which is the 7th month of the year, is going to be Sukkos. First day and the 8th day are Mikra Kodesh. In between that we have what's called Chol Hamoed. These are the Yom Tovim except the Shabbos is during the year. Besides that as well, you're entitled to bring Karbonos, Nedarim and Adavis, free will donations throughout the year. And the Torah ends off, the last Aliyah over here. Lokachton Lechem B'Yom Rishon, you should take on the first day of this 15th day of the 7th month, which is Sukkot. You should take the Dalad Minim, Lulav Esrog Adasim and Aravis. As well, you should sit in the Sukkot for 7 days as a commemoration to the fact that when we left Mitzrayim, we were housed in huts or literal houses or sukkahs as we traveled through the desert. And Klal Yisrael therefore remembers that all the time. Maftir is laying both days the same Maftir. It talks about the karbonos that are brought from Parshas Pinchas, that are brought on the first day of Yantiv of Pesach, and how Klal Yisrael did the same karbonos for the 7 days of Pesach as well. Good Yantiv.